My name is Ryan, and I'm 28 years old. If you'd asked me a month ago about my family, I would have told you that they were, at worst, mildly dysfunctional. You know the usual, passive-aggressive comments at Thanksgiving dinner, my mom playing obvious favorites with my younger sister Sophia, and my dad being blissfully unaware of literally everything happening around him. Annoying? Sure. Unbearable? Not really. But then Sophia's wedding happened, and I realized something that shook me to my core. My family doesn't just have favorites, they have a main character. And spoiler alert, it's not me. A little background here. Sophia is 25 years old, and to say she's been treated like royalty her entire life would be a massive understatement. I mean, this is the girl who threw an absolute tantrum at 16 because my parents got me a used car for my birthday, and she wanted a brand new one when she turned 16 too. And guess what happened? She got it. A brand new car with a bow on top, while I was stuck with my reliable but definitely not shiny used Honda. She's been the golden child, the princess, the one who can do absolutely no wrong, even when she's very, very wrong. Me. I was the older sibling who had to set a good example, which was basically code for, do everything right but get none of the praise. If I got a B+ on a test, my mom would shake her head and say, "Ryan, you're capable of so much more." Meanwhile, if Sophia barely passed with a C-, it was time to break out the balloons and cake and celebrate like she just won a Nobel Prize. Anyway, I knew going into Sophia's wedding that I wasn't going to be the star of the show. Obviously, it was her wedding, and I was genuinely happy to just be a supportive sibling, smile for the pictures, and get through the day without any unnecessary drama. But what I didn't expect, what I couldn't have possibly expected, was how far they would go to make sure I knew exactly where I stood in this family hierarchy. The warning signs were there early on, but I stupidly ignored them. First, I found out that I wasn't going to be in the wedding party. Fine, whatever. Not everyone includes their siblings as bridesmaids or groomsmen, right? Then I found out that Sophia's childhood best friend, her coworker from the marketing firm, and her fiancé's cousin's girlfriend, someone she'd met exactly twice, were all in the wedding party. Alright, that stung a little bit, but hey, maybe she just wanted to keep things fresh and have her own chosen people up there. Then came the seating chart situation. Now, I didn't expect to be at the head table, obviously that's reserved for the couple and their wedding party, but I figured I'd at least be seated with our family. You know, the people I've shared DNA and holidays with my entire life. The people who've known me since I was born. Nope. Wrong assumption. When I arrived at the venue, this gorgeous estate with sprawling gardens and a massive ballroom, and picked up my place card at the reception desk, I noticed something weird. My name wasn't grouped with my parents, my aunts, my uncles, or my cousins. In fact, my card wasn't even on the main seating chart at all. I had to ask someone where I was actually supposed to sit. A wedding planner, looking increasingly uncomfortable, checked her master list and then gave me the tightest, most awkward smile I've ever seen in my life. "Oh, Ryan, you're, right here." She pointed to a spot on her clipboard. I looked, and that's when I saw it. My seat was not in the grand ballroom where the crystal chandeliers sparkled overhead and the elegantly decorated tables filled every corner of the space. It was outside the ballroom. As in, physically in the hallway. Near the coat rack. At first, I actually laughed out loud. I thought there had to be some kind of mistake, like maybe they'd run out of chairs at the last minute and needed to temporarily move some things around, or maybe this was some kind of weird joke that I wasn't getting. But no. That was my designated seat. A lonely little table near the entrance, just me and the faint smell of mothballs from people's winter coats hanging nearby. I turned to the wedding planner, still grinning like a fool because my brain absolutely refused to process what was actually happening. "You're kidding, right?" She looked so incredibly uncomfortable, her smile faltering. "I'm really, really sorry, but this is where you've been assigned." Assigned. Like a prisoner getting their cell block number. Like I was some random plus one who'd crashed the wedding and they had to stick me somewhere out of the way. I wasn't even mad yet. I was too busy being completely confused. Like, was this some kind of elaborate prank? Some bizarre wedding tradition I'd never heard of? I needed answers, and I knew exactly who to ask. I found Sophia near the bridal suite, absolutely basking in the glow of being the bride, surrounded by her gaggle of friends and our mom, who was busy fawning over every detail of her dress. She saw me coming and gave me the fakest smile in the entire world, the kind of smile you give to someone you're forced to be polite to but secretly wish would disappear. "Oh, hey, you made it," she chirped. I held up my place card, trying to keep my voice calm. "Yeah, quick question. Why is my seat not in the reception hall?" She blinked at me, then actually giggled. Actually giggled. "Oh, that? Yeah, we had to move a few things around last minute." "Aha. And I just so happened to be the one who got moved to the hallway." Sophia shrugged like it was absolutely no big deal whatsoever. "I mean, yeah. We had to prioritize close family at the main tables." I blinked at her, my confusion deepening. "I am close family." That's when my mom, who had been pretending not to listen to this entire conversation while adjusting Sophia's veil, chimed in with that sugary sweet voice that always meant trouble. "Now Ryan, don't make a scene. It's Sophia's special day." "I'm not making a scene," I said, my voice rising slightly despite my best efforts. "I'm asking why I'm literally sitting with the Coates." And then, Sophia dropped the line that officially made this the absolute worst wedding I've ever attended in my entire life. "Well, you kind of aren't really immediate family anymore." I stared at her, trying desperately to decipher what that even meant. "Excuse me?" She shrugged again, casually adjusting her veil like this conversation was boring her to death. "You moved out years ago, you don't come around that often anymore, and you're not married or anything. It's just different now." I don't even know how to properly describe the feeling that settled deep in my chest at that exact moment. It wasn't just anger, though there was plenty of that brewing. It was something heavier, something colder, something that felt like betrayal mixed with disbelief. I wasn't immediate family anymore because I had the audacity to grow up and live my own life. Because I wasn't married before her. Before I could say anything, before I could even formulate a coherent response, another voice cut in, sharp and amused. "Oh, you're Ryan. I was wondering who that seat belonged to." And that's when I saw her. Sophia's new mother-in-law. I hadn't interacted with her much before that day, but the second she walked up to our little group, I knew exactly what kind of person she was. The type who absolutely loved drama, thrived on it, lived to stir the pot and watch everything explode. She glanced at me, smirking with barely concealed amusement. "I saw that little table out there." I forced a tight smile, my jaw clenching. "Yep, that's me. The sibling who apparently doesn't count." Sophia's mother-in-law, let's call her Margaret, chuckled and gave me a once-over, her expression full of mocking sympathy. "Well, you know how weddings are. Only the most important people get the best spots." That's when it clicked. This wasn't just Sophia's doing. Her new mother-in-law was actively enjoying this little power play, and suddenly everything made perfect sense. This wasn't some seating mistake. This wasn't bad planning or a last-minute shuffle. This was intentional. Calculated. Deliberate. And the moment I realized that, something inside me shifted completely. I wasn't going to sit through this wedding quietly, pretending everything was fine. And I definitely wasn't going to leave without making a statement. I took a slow, deliberate breath, my fingers tightening around the place card still clutched in my hand. All right. If this is how they wanted to play it, fine. But they forgot one very important thing: I grew up with Sophia. I knew her secrets. I knew all the little things she said behind people's backs when she thought no one important was listening. And most importantly, I knew that she absolutely hated her new mother-in-law. Oh, She'd smiled in Margaret's face, acted all sweet and grateful, played the perfect daughter-in-law role to perfection. But behind closed doors, it was a completely different story. And right now, I had an audience. I turned to Margaret, plastering on my very best fake sympathetic expression, the one I'd learned from watching my mom all these years. You know, it's funny. Just the other day, Sophia was so worried about seating arrangements. Sophia, who had been looking at her perfectly manicured nails like she was bored out of her mind, suddenly stiffened. Margaret raised an eyebrow, her interest clearly piqued. Oh. I nodded enthusiastically, keeping my voice casual and conversational. Yeah, she was super stressed. Kept saying she really didn't want certain people sitting too close to the head table. I let the words linger in the air for a moment, then leaned in slightly like I was letting Margaret in on a juicy little secret. Something about not wanting her wedding photos ruined by, what was it, Sophia? I turned to her, tilting my head innocently. Oh, right. By someone's tacky dress sense. A hush fell over the little group. Margaret's smirk disappeared in an instant. Excuse me. Sophia's face drained of all color. Ryan. But I wasn't done. Not even close. Oh, and remember how you were so worried about speeches? You were really, really stressed about what certain people would say. I gave Margaret a pointed look, my smile never wavering. I believe your exact words were, if she gives a speech, I swear to God I'll lose my mind. She's so embarrassing. She'll probably try to make the whole thing about herself. Margaret's expression darkened considerably, her eyes narrowing. Emily made a strangled noise, reaching desperately for my arm. Can I talk to you for a second? Privately. I pulled away smoothly, pretending to be confused. Why? I thought we were having a nice family conversation. Since I'm not immediate family, I figured I'd at least try to get involved somehow. Margaret turned to Sophia, her voice dropping to a dangerous tone. Is that true, Sophia? Sophia let out a nervous, high-pitched laugh, shaking her head frantically. No, of course not. Ryan is just. Oh, and don't forget the bachelorette party. I gasped, smacking my forehead like I'd just remembered something important. Silly me, how could I not mention that? I turned back to Margaret, my expression one of exaggerated concern. You know, the one where Sophia spent half the night complaining about you. Said she was counting down the days until she didn't have to fake being nice anymore. Said she was only tolerating you because she didn't want to start her marriage off with drama. That was it. That was the kill shot. Margaret's mouth fell open. My mother, who had been standing awkwardly to the side this entire time, looked absolutely horrified. My dad, who had been completely clueless up until this exact moment, actually took a step back like he wanted to pretend he wasn't part of this family anymore. Sophia's friends, the bridesmaids in their matching lavender dresses, started whispering frantically amongst themselves, sending each other wide-eyed glances and shocked expressions. Sophia, meanwhile, looked like she was about to spontaneously combust. Her lips were moving, but no sound was coming out. Her face had gone from pale to bright red in about 3 seconds flat. And then Margaret absolutely exploded. You ungrateful little brat. I had to bite my tongue hard to keep from smiling, because this was about to get so good. Margaret's voice was sharp and furious, cutting through the air like a knife. After everything I've done for you. She gestured wildly toward the ballroom, her perfectly manicured nails flashing under the elegant lighting. The money I put into this wedding. The favors I pulled. The connections I used. And this whole time, you've been running your mouth behind my back. Sophia stammered, her hands fluttering uselessly. I didn't, I never. Margaret turned to my parents, her fury expanding to include them. You knew about this? You raised her to be this kind of snake. My mother looked like she was going to faint right there on the spot. Of course not. Sophia would never. Oh, don't even try, I cut in, shaking my head. You absolutely knew. You just didn't care. I let out a fake sigh, my voice dripping with sarcasm. I mean, you did raise her to think she's the most important person in the entire world. Kind of makes sense she'd start treating everyone else like garbage, huh? Mom's face twisted with anger, her voice rising. Ryan, stop it right now. Why? I asked, crossing my arms. Because I'm causing a scene. Funny how that only matters when I'm the one speaking up. Didn't seem to be a problem when Sophia literally shoved me out of the reception. By now, people were definitely staring. The whispers had grown louder, spreading through the nearby areas like wildfire. Guests were turning their heads, murmuring amongst themselves, trying to figure out what was happening. Even the groom, who had been mysteriously missing during this whole confrontation, finally wandered over with his brows furrowed in confusion. What's going on here? He asked cautiously. Margaret rounded on him next, her fury finding a new target. What's going on is that your wife, she spat the word like it was poison, is a backstabbing little brat who's been insulting me and my family this whole time. The groom blinked, clearly trying to process. Wait, what? Margaret jabbed a finger toward Sophia, who looked like she wanted the ground to open up and swallow her whole. She's been running her mouth about me for months. Complaining about my dress, my speech, my presence. Saying she's only putting up with me until she doesn't have to anymore. The groom turned to Sophia slowly, his expression shifting from confusion to something darker. Did you actually say that? Sophia shook her head furiously, tears starting to form in her eyes. No. I mean, well, not like that. Margaret scoffed. Oh, not like that. Oh, please. Spare me. She turned to her son, her voice sharp and final. And here I was thinking she actually cared about this family. And just like that, it was officially a war zone. Margaret and Sophia were snapping at each other, voices rising higher and higher. My mom was desperately trying to calm everyone down, which wasn't working at all. My dad looked absolutely miserable, like he wanted to walk straight into the ocean and never come back. The groom was still just standing there, looking like someone had hit him in the face with a frying pan. His expression was a mixture of shock, hurt, and dawning realization. Meanwhile, I just stood there calmly, watching the destruction unfold like I was at a Broadway play, sipping champagne that someone had abandoned on a nearby table. And I'll be honest. It was absolutely beautiful. But the best part, the absolute cherry on top, was that I wasn't done yet. Sophia's voice was climbing higher and higher in pitch, her hands shaking as she turned to her new husband, desperation clear in her eyes. You believe her over me, she shrieked, gesturing wildly in my direction. She's lying. She's trying to ruin everything. Her husband, to his credit, was still trying to process everything, but his jaw was clenched tight, his expression shifting between disbelief and deep embarrassment as guests openly stared at them. I don't even know what to say, Sophia, he muttered, rubbing his forehead. I mean, did you actually say that stuff? Sophia scoffed, throwing her hands up dramatically. It was taken out of context. I raised an eyebrow, my voice dripping with sarcasm. Out of context. Oh, right, that classic excuse. I put on my best mocking voice. Oh no, I was just venting. Oh no, I didn't mean it that way. My voice flattened. Give it up, Sophia. You got caught. And let's be honest here, if I didn't say anything, you still wouldn't have cared. Margaret, whose fury was only growing with each passing second, turned to my parents with renewed anger. And you're just okay with this? Mom's mouth opened and closed like a fish gasping for air. She looked desperate to say something, anything, that would salvage this absolute disaster of a situation. We don't condone. Oh, cut it, I said, waving a dismissive hand. You absolutely knew she felt this way, and you still let her pretend to be the perfect daughter-in-law. I clicked my tongue disapprovingly. Guess it's all about keeping up appearances, huh? Sophia screamed, her voice echoing through the area. You're ruining my wedding, Ryan. I looked around dramatically, gesturing to the gathering crowd of shocked guests. Oh, I'm ruining it? Sorry, I didn't realize I was the one treating family members like dirt and trash-talking the mother of the groom. I turned back to the guests, many of whom were staring with wide eyes. What do you guys think? Who's really to blame here? A few people quickly averted their eyes, clearly not wanting to get involved in this family drama. But one of the bridesmaids, Sophia's own bridesmaid, whispered something to the woman standing next to her, and that woman let out a laugh that she quickly tried to stifle behind her hand. That only made Sophia angrier. You think this is funny? She hissed, whipping toward them. The bridesmaid's lips twitched, clearly trying not to smile. I mean, kind of. Oh, this was getting so good. Sophia's hands curled into fists at her sides, but before she could completely explode again, I decided to wrap things up. Because frankly, I was getting bored, and I had made my point. I let out a long, dramatic sigh, shaking my head slowly. Well, this has been absolutely lovely. Really, just a fantastic experience all around. I paused, letting the sarcasm sink in. But I think it's time for me to go. Sophia scoffed, throwing up her hands in exasperation. Fine. Go. I grinned, the smile not reaching my eyes. Oh, don't worry, I will. Then I turned toward the gift table, scanning the pile of expensive-looking presents stacked carefully near the front entrance, all wrapped in elegant paper with elaborate bows. And there it was. My gift. The one I had spent weeks carefully picking out. The one that had taken actual effort, genuine thought, and more importantly, a significant amount of money. An expensive set of kitchenware that Sophia had specifically requested from her registry. Sophia followed my gaze, and her eyes went huge with realization. Ryan, no. I strolled over casually, humming to myself as I plucked the elegantly wrapped gift box from the table, tucking it under one arm. Sophia's jaw literally dropped. Are you seriously taking it back? I gave her my best deadpan expression. Why would I leave it here? Apparently, I'm not real family, right? I let out a fake gasp, clutching my chest dramatically. Oh my God, what if I accidentally contaminated it with my, what was it Margaret said? Oh, right, my unimportant person germs. Wouldn't want to taint your precious married life. Sophia's face turned an absolutely dangerous shade of red. You're such a child. I shrugged, clutching the box more securely under one arm. Maybe. But at least I'm not a fake, lying, two-faced brat who pretends to be sweet while talking badly about people behind their backs. I paused, then turned toward Margaret, whose fury still hadn't subsided one bit. Hey, Margaret. Good luck with this one. I give the marriage a year. Maybe less. Margaret actually let out a bark of laughter, which only made Sophia screech louder. I hate you. I really, really hate you. I turned on my heel and made my way toward the exit, the tension behind me so thick you could cut it with a knife. Guests were whispering furiously now, the music had stopped completely, and the entire atmosphere had shifted from celebratory to full-blown disaster zone. And honestly, I absolutely loved every second of it. As I reached the door, I paused, looking back at the chaotic scene behind me one last time. Sophia was still arguing desperately with Margaret, her voice shrill and panicked. My parents looked like they wanted to disappear into the floor. The groom was just standing there like he was reconsidering his entire life and every decision that had led him to this exact moment. And me? I gave a little wave, a smug smile tugging at my lips. Enjoy your perfect wedding, sis. Then I walked out. I didn't look back. After I walked out of that absolute disaster of a wedding, I didn't need to look back. I already knew the damage had been done, and honestly, it was more satisfying than I could have possibly imagined. The moment those doors shut behind me, I let out a slow, deep breath and adjusted the weight of the wedding gift under my arm. Petty? Maybe. Satisfying? Absolutely. I drove home in complete silence, letting the quiet night settle around me, my mind replaying every single detail of what had just happened. My sister's shrieking, my mother's panicked expression, my father's uncomfortable silence, Margaret's absolute rage, it was all pure gold. But I knew the fallout was just beginning. And I was absolutely right. The next morning, my phone was completely flooded. Calls, texts, missed voicemails, it was like my entire family had suddenly remembered I existed and decided to bombard me all at once. My mother had left 7 voicemails, her voice switching between desperate pleading and absolute fury. "Ryan, what were you thinking? You've humiliated your sister on the biggest day of her life. Call me back right now. Ryan, honey, please, we can talk about this. Just come over and let's work this out together." That was the most immature, selfish thing I have ever seen in my entire life. I hope you're happy. I hope you enjoyed destroying your sister's wedding. Oh, I did, Mom. I really, really did. But my sister's messages? Those were even better. A whole string of them, each more dramatic than the last. "It's over between us. How could you do this? You ruined everything. I can't even look at my wedding photos because of you. You took back your gift. Are you serious? What kind of person does that? I hate you. I really, really hate you." I grinned as I scrolled through them, leisurely sipping my morning coffee. If Sophia thought a few angry texts were going to make me feel bad, she really didn't know me at all. But what really caught my attention, what made me pause mid-sip, was the text from my dad. Unlike my mother and sister, who were spewing insults and demanding immediate apologies, his texts were short, simple, and calm. "Call me when you have a moment." I hesitated before dialing his number. Dad wasn't the type to get involved in family drama. Usually, he just let my mom and Sophia run the show while he stayed safely in the background, avoiding conflict at all costs. The fact that he was reaching out at all meant something significant was really going on. He picked up after the second ring. "Ryan." "Hey, Dad." A long pause filled the line, then he sighed heavily. "Why would you do this?" I snorted. It wasn't my fault. They lit the fuse. He let out another sigh, and for a moment, I thought he was about to launch into a lecture about family and forgiveness and being the bigger person. But instead, he chuckled, low, almost tired, but genuine. "Yeah, they kind of did." That caught me completely off guard. "Wait, you actually agree with me?" "I didn't say that," he replied carefully, but his tone was different. Quieter. More thoughtful. "But I saw what happened. And I saw how your mother and sister treated you. It wasn't right, Ryan." I leaned back in my chair, genuinely surprised. "So, what, you're the only one not blaming me?" Another pause. "Not the only one. Turns out, the wedding didn't just go back to normal after I left. The damage I had done, it had been absolutely irreversible. Margaret had completely lost it after I exposed Sophia. She had publicly chewed her out in front of everyone, and I mean everyone, demanding to know if what I said was actually true. And Sophia, being Sophia, had panicked. Tried to lie, tried to play innocent, tried to backtrack and claim it was all a misunderstanding. But apparently, Margaret had already suspected something was off about her new daughter-in-law for a while now. My little revelation. It had been the final straw that broke everything wide open. By the time the reception ended, if you could even call it a reception at that point, Margaret had all but disowned Sophia. And the groom? Oh, he was absolutely furious. Apparently, he had been under the impression that Sophia and his mother had a great relationship. He had no idea that Sophia had been trashing her behind her back the entire time. Finding out like that, in front of everyone, at their wedding. Yeah, not great for a brand new marriage. According to my dad, Sophia and her husband had a massive fight that night. And I mean huge. As in, maybe we should rethink this whole marriage, levels of huge. And my parents? Oh, they were caught right in the middle of it all. My mom had tried desperately to do damage control, but Margaret wasn't having any of it. She had blamed my mother point blank for raising a spoiled, manipulative brat, and had told her in no uncertain terms that she didn't want Sophia anywhere near her family anymore. Complete and total fallout. So what's the situation now? I asked, genuinely curious. Dad sighed again, and I could practically hear him rubbing his temples. Sophia is, well, she's not handling it well. I rolled my eyes. Shocker. She's blaming you for everything, he continued. She thinks if you hadn't said anything, none of this would have happened. I let out a loud laugh. Oh, of course she does. God forbid she actually take responsibility for her own actions. Dad was quiet for a moment, then said carefully, she wants you to apologize. I actually choked on my coffee. Apologize? She thinks it's the only way to fix things, he explained. She thinks if you just take the blame, maybe Margaret will forgive her and things can go back to normal. I couldn't stop laughing. The absurdity of it all was just too much. Yeah, that's not happening. Not a chance. I figured, Dad said, and then in a lower voice, almost conspiratorial, he added, I don't think you should anyway. That actually made me pause, my laughter fading. Wait, seriously? I told you, Ryan. I saw what happened. And honestly? He paused, then continued quietly, maybe it's about time someone called her out. That meant more to me than I wanted to admit. More than I expected it to. So what happens now? I asked. Dad sighed heavily. Your mom is still trying desperately to patch things up with Margaret, but I don't think it's going to work. Margaret is furious, absolutely furious. The groom is barely speaking to Sophia. And as for Sophia. He hesitated, his voice dropping. Well, she's a complete mess. Good, I said flatly. I didn't say it out loud to him, but I wasn't going to lie to myself about how I felt. My sister had spent years, literal years, making me feel like an afterthought, treating me like I wasn't good enough, like I didn't belong, like I was somehow less than. And now? Now she was facing the consequences of her own actions. It was about damn time. Anyway, Dad continued, I just thought you should know what's going on. Your mother will probably try to call you again. She can try, I said, shrugging even though he couldn't see me. I'm not answering. Dad let out a short laugh. Can't say I blame you. And that was that. It's been a few weeks since the wedding now, and honestly, I haven't spoken to my sister since that day. She still refuses to take any responsibility whatsoever. She still blames me for absolutely everything. She still expects me to somehow fix it all, to apologize, to make everything magically go back to normal. But I won't. I refuse to. I don't regret what I did, not for a single second. If anything, I'm proud of it. As for the marriage? Well, let's just say that I wouldn't be surprised at all if it doesn't last. Dad told me last week that Sophia and her husband are going through a rough patch, which I'm pretty sure is code for, on the verge of divorce. Margaret still won't speak to her. The groom's family has basically cut her off completely. And my parents? They're stuck in the middle, trying desperately to salvage something from this disaster while simultaneously pretending like everything is fine. Meanwhile, I'm living my life, completely unbothered, enjoying the peace and quiet of not having to deal with their drama anymore. So what do you guys think? Was I too petty? Should I have just played along and accepted my seat by the coat rack? Or did my sister get exactly what she deserved? Honestly, I think we all know the answer to that.